Hey everyone, my name is Sarah. I make content about my nursing journey and just general nursing stuff. Today I'm going to be going through part 3 of my science review for the ATI TEAS. If you haven't watched part 1 and 2, go ahead and watch that. Link in the description. Today we're going to be going over the endocrine system, neuromuscular system, skeletal system, integumentary system, and reproductive system. I'm just basically reading you what my notes were and how I studied for the TEAS exam. I did score in the 95th percentile, so some of you might find it helpful for me to share my notes. I'm basically just going over what you need to know. So we can begin. I'm trying to keep this video under 30 minutes. So if you're watching this the night before, week before your test, it's not going to take that long. These videos aren't meant to be comprehensive, just going over the basic things you need to know. So with that said, we're going to start with the endocrine system. The endocrine system is responsible for regulating functions in the body. You need to know that appetite, sleep cycle, growth, brain functioning, response to stress, and blood production. That's what the endocrine system does. It's involved in secreting hormones, and then hormones are signals that tell organs to perform certain functions. So you need to know the glands that are associated with the endocrine system are adrenal, pineal, pituitary, thymus, thyroid, and parathyroid. And then organs associated with the endocrine system are ovaries, testes, and pancreas. Pancreas is a big one. You definitely need to know that the hypothalamus is the part of the brain that controls the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland does most of the hormones, most of them. So the pituitary gland is going to be controlling the other parts for the most part in the endocrine system. So the pituitary gland is right below the hypothalamus, so that's how you can remember them. They're really close together, and this is the link between the endocrine and nervous systems. So pineal gland is in the middle of the brain. Adrenal gland are on the kidneys. You need to know that. Thyroid and parathyroid glands are on the neck. Thyroid is butterfly shaped, and then the point of attachment of the two lobes of the thyroid is the isthmus. The parathyroid is the 4 small glands on the posterior aspect of the thyroid. It's the back of the thyroid. So what you definitely need to know is that pancreas releases insulin, which basically sucks out glucose from your bloodstream, so it's going to decrease blood sugar. And then glucagon breaks down stored glycogen to raise blood sugar. This targets the liver, and this is going to raise blood sugar levels. Type 1 diabetes happens with an overactive immune system, so the body is attacking cells in the pancreas to make insulin. And then type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance happens as a result of chronic high blood sugar levels. So you definitely need to know that the pineal gland releases melatonin, which regulates sleep cycle. That's you definitely need to know that. The adrenal gland releases epinephrine. You need to link epinephrine to fight or flight response. So think raising your blood pressure, raising your heart rate, things like that, metabolism, muscle strength, all of this in response to stress. The hypothalamus is going to release inhibiting or it's called releasing hormones to the pituitary gland. And then this is basically gonna suppress the hormones, basically. It kind of keeps it in check. So the pituitary gland releases growth hormone, which stimulates growth in bones and muscles. Luteinizing hormones stimulates production of sex hormones and stimulates ovulation. Thyroid stimulating hormone targets the thyroid, so this is going to mainly control your metabolism. Follicle stimulating hormone is for the egg development in the ovaries, maturation of sperm cells and ovarian follicles. Prolactin stimulates production of milk in the mammary glands. So oxytocin, you definitely need to know. It's one of the 2 that I wrote down that are secreted by the posterior pituitary gland. The other ones I just mentioned are anterior. So the ones secreted by the posterior gland are going to be produced in the hypothalamus and stored there. So that's why ADH, which is antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin are both the posterior aspect. If it comes up on the test, for all intents and purposes, if it's a hormone that isn't ADH or oxytocin, probably anterior aspect is a good guess. But the oxytocin secreted by the posterior pituitary gland stimulates uterine contractions during childbirth. This is an example of positive feedback. And then antidiuretic hormone increases water retention in the kidneys and blood vessels. basically in the urinary system, antidiuretic hormone like reabsorbs the water. So for people with diabetes insipidus, it's going to, the ADH hormones are going to be disrupted. So it's either going to be like not present or extremely low. So the person's just going to like not be able to reabsorb water in the urinary system. They're going to constantly urinate and they're going to be very thirsty as a result because they're just getting rid of so much water. And then the thyroid releases thyroxine, which stimulates metabolism. And then also, I didn't write this down, but it did come up on my exam. You need to know that aldosterone, it's a steroid hormone. Its main role is to regulate salt and water in the body. So this is going to be pertaining to the urinary system. I happened to take a practice test and I happened to look this up because it came up and I was like, I've never seen this before. It came up on my actual exam too, so like definitely need to know that. I wrote increase of oxygen and testosterone levels during puberty leads to secondary sex characteristics. And then the activation of the neuroendocrine system is when the nervous system and endocrine system work together. So there you go. So moving on to the neuromuscular system. The neuromuscular system controls involuntary and voluntary movement by integrating muscles and nerves. Each muscle fiber is connected to a nerve fiber. So nerves send and receive signals from the central nervous system, which are brain and spinal cord. You need to know that. Just FYI, the peripheral nervous system is like everything in the nervous system that isn't the brain and spinal cord. Impulses are transferred between nerve cells via electrotransmitters into the synapse and the axon terminal. You need to definitely know the difference between afferent and efferent nerves. So the way that I remember this is AOC. She's environmentally friendly. So I think AOC and then ECO. So afferent nerves travel from organs to the central nervous system, and then ECO is the opposite. Efferent nerves travel from the central nervous system to organs. So afferent nerves, since they're going from like the body or like organs to the central nervous system, those are going to be your sensory nerves. And then efferent nerves, since they're traveling from the brain to the rest of the body, those are going to be like your motor neurons. So like that's super important. You need to know that. The autonomic nervous system is going to handle your automatic or involuntary functions like controlling heart rate, digestion, blood pressure, breathing, etc. So, you know, if you think about it, you don't like will your body to regulate your blood pressure. It just does. So the somatic nervous system is the opposite of that. It's going to be like your voluntary functions, kind of like how I'm talking to you right now, like I'm moving my hands, I can snap, I can walk, I can laugh, like those are all like voluntary things. So making like a thumbs up is an example. So then I wrote the types of muscles are cardiac, which are striated, they have the little stripes on them, and they're going to be branched shaped. That's going to be involuntary movement, like, you know, your heart muscles, like you don't tell them, you don't, you know, contract your heart muscles on your own, like that's something your body just does for you. Your skeletal muscles are striated and cylindrical in shape. Those are going to be voluntary movement, kind of like how I'm moving my bones right now. Skeletal muscles. And then smooth muscles are going to be muscles like in your organs. So those are going to be non-striated and then spindle shape, and then involuntary movement, like, you know, when your stomach is churning in the digestive system, it's like breaking down food and moving food down, like that's smooth muscle. You can't control that. It's involuntary. You need to know that the sarcomere is a contractile unit of a muscle fiber. It's made up of myofibrils. And then you need to know actin and myosin. So actin are the thin filaments, myosin are the thick filaments, and then muscle contraction happens when actin and myosin are pulled together. So the sarcomere is like contracting. And then the two basic muscle movements are contraction and relaxation. I also wrote something. Oh, there it is. Relaxing. Okay, so the muscle that's relaxing is the antagonist, and the contracting muscle is the prime mover. I don't know if that's need to know that, but I thought it was important, so I wrote it down. So moving on to the skeletal system. The skeletal system is going to be responsible for movement, protection, storage of calcium, phosphate, and fat. Bones make blood and immune cells. So major bones in the body you need to know. Also, you need to know the major muscles in the body. I just completely skipped over that. Just didn't know any of them. So one of the questions came up about muscles and I was like, couldn't tell you. So I'm assuming you need to know the major muscles in the back, in the arm. I'm assuming also muscles in the legs too. I don't think you need to know like every single little one of them, but it is helpful to know them because I got a question and I did not know any of the answers. I mean, that's not, I could guess based off like what the root words were. Like, I think it said like coccygeal muscles and I was like, okay, I think those like your hip muscles. Cause like, I don't know. It was like shot in the dark with that question, but it's fine. So for the skeletal system, it's going to be responsible for movement. So, okay, so the major bones of the body, I wrote cranium pertains to like your head. It protects your brain. Mandible is your lower jaw. Ribs protect your heart. I wrote spinal cord has 7 cerebral, 12 thoracic, and 5 lumbar. I think it was the Smart Edition video that said this, the way that they said it, and I just remembered it. So at 7 in the morning, you have cereal. At 12, you have turkey sandwich or tuna sandwich. And then at 5, you have lasagna. So it's like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's how I remembered it. And then you have your coccyx and sacrum, which are like the very, very, very end of your spine. So then the clavicle is the collarbone, scapula is shoulder blade, pelvis is hip bone. So you definitely do need to know that metacarpals and carpals pertain to like your hand bones. And then metatarsals and tarsals are like your foot bones. Phalanges are your fingers and toes. Calcaneus is heel. Femur is your thigh bone. Tibia and fibula are your leg bones. Patella is kneecap, and then humerus, radius, and ulna are your arm bones. You basically just need to know like where they are. You don't need to know like what they look like, just that, you know, where you basically just need to know the regions of bones and where they are. So then long bones are basically just bones that are long. So think radius, ulna, femur, humerus, tibia, all that good stuff. Short bones are going to be like the bones in your hands. And then flat bones, they wrote ribs, or I wrote ribs. And then irregular bones are like just wacky looking bones. So think like your skull or your hip bone. So joints is where bone meets bone. And then bones are attached by ligaments. Cartilage prevents bones from grinding together. Synovial joints allow for movement, and then some joints are immovable, like the bones in your cranium. Like those don't move. You wouldn't want them to move. I wrote that the periosteum is the outer covering of bones that contains nerves and blood vessels. The osteon is a cylindrical tree trunk-like structure because it has like the rings. And then inside, so it's inside the periosteum. It's the functional unit of contact bone. I wrote that an osteocyte is a bone cell or a mature osteoblast. It's housed in the lacunae. An osteoblast makes bone. An osteoclast breaks down bone. And then ossification is bone growth. So osteoporosis, I wrote, happens when the osteoclasts break down bones faster than osteoblasts can deposit minerals to form the bones. So your bones just get weak and brittle. So arthritis is when there's damaged cartilage between bones, causing them to grind together. And then a tendon is where muscle meets bone. So the way that I remember the difference between tendons and ligaments, I just remember the word bulb. So there's 2 bones and in the middle is an L. Or I mean 2 B's in the middle is an L. So I wrote B, bulb, like without the U. BLB, bulb. So remember bone, ligament, bone, and then tendon is muscle. Muscle bone. So that's how I remember that. Moving along into the integumentary system. This actually came up quite a bit on my test. It provides a barrier between the body and outside, it's your skin. This is going to function as protection. It also prevents the body from drying out. It excretes water, minerals like sodium and sweat. It does not absorb water. It just know that if you see something that's like, oh, like it absorbs water, no, the endocrine system does not. It's going to put out something. So this is also serving as interaction between body and environment via your sensory nerves. And then I wrote vitamin D is produced when exposed to sunlight, and then also helps with thermoregulation. So you definitely need to know the difference between the layers of the skin. So epidermis is the outer layer. It's a location of melanocytes, which gives skin its pigment, and then it also is going to protect skin from the sun's UV rays because of the melanin. It's a waterproof surface. It has 4, sometimes 5 layers. And then the layers that I wrote from superficial to deep of the epidermis: the stratum corneum, the stratum lucid, the stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and then stratum basale. The way that I remembered the order was looking at like nature. So up top you have the clouds for the corneum. Below that you have the leaves, so like the trees. So the lucidum. Underneath that you have the ground. Underneath the ground you have seeds. And then underneath seeds you have bodies. And I know that's that's why I remembered it, because like seeds are, you know, relatively like underneath the ground, but then bodies are like real deep in the ground. Do you know what I mean? So that's how I remember the layers. And then the stratum lucidum is only on the thick skin. So that's like why like your hands and your feet are like tougher. It's because they have that extra layer. I forgot to write, I think I wrote down stratum basale is the deepest layer of the epidermis and contains melanin producing cells. So if something asks, the stratum basale is where the melanocytes are in the epidermis. So the dermis is the middle layer. This is super important. You need to know that this is where the nerve endings, hair follicles, collagen, sweat glands, and blood vessels are. And then the hypodermis is the inner layer. Also, anything, or from what I understand, if a word has like cutaneous in it, it has to pertain to the skin. So like subcutaneous means like under, like, you know, it's like the, I believe it's the hypodermis, it's the hypodermis. It's like, so cutaneous is like skin related. So if you really have to get down to it and like you don't know the answer to a question, if you understand like the roots of things, it gets easier to guess. So accessory structures of the integumentary system are hair and nails, and that is all I wrote for the integumentary system. But you do need to know that sunburns are first-degree burns, and it's going to burn through the epidermis. That's what I wrote on that. So moving on to the reproductive system, I wrote the female reproductive role is to generate female gamete cells, or eggs, and then incubate the fetus during pregnancy. It consists of ovaries, fallopian tubes, cervix, uterus, and vagina. Egg cells mature in the ovaries and travel down the fallopian tubes. Fallopian tubes are generally the site of fertilization and are connected to the uterus, and connects like the ovaries to the uterus, where the fertilized egg implants. The cervix is the opening to the uterus, and then the vagina is like the canal, like, so like you think like cervix is in the middle between the uterus and the vagina. The vagina is the canal that starts outside the body and then ends at the cervix. So I wrote luteinizing hormone releases egg from ovaries. Estrogen makes egg mature and I don't know how to pronounce it, Graafian follicle of the ovary. It causes the uterine lining to thicken. And then corpus luteum is referring to an empty Graafian follicle. I don't remember getting too many questions of the reproductive system, so I'm glad I didn't spend too much time on this. But the male reproductive role is to generate male gamete cells, or sperm, deliver them to the female reproductive system. Consists of the vas deferens, urethra, testes, penis, prostate, seminal vesicles, and scrotum. So the testes are the primary male reproductive organ. Sperm is produced there, and then seminal vesicles, this is important, seminal vesicles and prostate provide the lubricating and nourishing fluid for sperm. Scrotum houses the testes, which keeps the testes close to the body in order to keep them warm when the outside environment is cold. And then the scrotum loosens to hold the testes further away from the body when it's warm. And then I also wrote the vas deferens is the tube that connects to the urethra where sperm is ejected. And then I also wrote the follicle stimulating hormone
for males is the hormone that initiates puberty. I'm not sure if it's for females, but I didn't get any. This didn't come up on test at all, but it's fine. Luteinizing hormone signals testes to produce testosterone, and then LH plus LH plus FSH together is the hormones work together to tell the body to produce sperm. So that concludes all the notes that I wrote down. However, I took a lot of random notes based off of the questions that I got wrong. So I'm going to go over those now. So I wrote dendritic cells, from my understanding, are the same as APCs or antigen presenting cells, like I think it's macrophages. The macrophages that like eat the antigens and then like wear them on themselves. Like, I think that was so funny. So then they display them on their surface to help act, they show them to the helper T cells, and the helper T cells activate the B cells, which differentiate into plasma cells. Those produce the antibodies. For whatever reason, I couldn't understand that. I thought I did, but like, I guess I didn't. Dendritic cells link passive and active immune systems together. I wrote the hyoid bone supports the tongue. Like, that's the bone that supports the tongue. It's actually not connected to another bone. It's connected to muscle. The apocrine glands secrete fats. And so they include a variety of glands, like the mammary glands, the like things that make your earwax, and then your like tear ducts, like things that make tears. I wrote that low oxygen levels cause muscles to produce energy, and then because like it doesn't have enough energy, it ferments lactic acid. So that you needed to know. This one I didn't know. Evaporation is also called transpiration, like of water from plant leaves. It's called transpiration. Didn't know that. So alveolar macrophages in the lung remove particles that like whatever the mucous membranes in the lungs like couldn't hold. Like the alveolar macrophages will eat them. We went over aldosterone. When a muscle is in a relaxed state, tropomyosin covers myosin binding sites on actin. You need to know that. You also need to know, I got this wrong. In liquids, molecules are closely packed but are not confined to a pattern. They are in constant rapid motion due to their thermal energy. Didn't know that. I also wrote down that the spleen is the site where blood is filtered and stored. So damage to the spleen would cause major blood loss. I wrote that nitric oxide functions as a vasodilator. I wrote that glycine is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. I wrote that, primary consumers are herbivores. Didn't know that. B cells mature into plasma cells, which secrete antibodies. And then foods that contain protein, so think like meat, basically, are broken down into amino acids, which is a component of urea. So urea is, amino acids or proteins is a component of urea. I did not know that. So those are just some little tidbits of things that would probably be helpful to you, hopefully. If you liked this video, thank you so much. Go ahead and give it a like. I am going to be filming a math review sometimes in the coming week, and I'm also going to be filming a video on how I study for the ATI TEAS to score within the 96th percentile. So if you want to follow me on my nursing journey, if you want to see my face again, go ahead and subscribe. Also, let's be friends on Instagram. You can DM me or follow me at Delightfully Sarah. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.